Hello and welcome back to the From the Terrace podcast. It's a different scenery today. We have Charles and Regan joining us as ever, but this time through the power of the internet rather than across the desk. And look who it is. The boys are usually behind the camera, showing their faces.
There's a reason for that.
Yeah, there's a reason they've waited so long. Look at them. Wayne, you're back. You're no longer part of the furniture behind the scenes. You're actually on screen.
Yeah, I know. It's
I've never wanted it so much.
There's a break in the quantum leap. What's going on?
Right. Anyway, this week Charles is going to be hosting it with a little sort of a little turn of events. Charles, get asking away. I know you've got a few questions for us.
Yep, for my university assignment, I wouldn't have wanted to be here otherwise. So here we go.
Cheers.
Okay, I'm going to start off with a quote. I wanted to see if anyone from our industry would speak up about the Alabama abortion bill, but I guess people are too scared. This isn't just an issue for women, it's one for every human being. Hector Bellerin. Now I'm going to come to you first, Bill. Just first thoughts, not about the actual bill itself or anything to do with the Alabama case. What are your first thoughts when you hear a quote like that coming from footballer Hector Bellerin?
What's he doing? Seriously, because it's not even like I don't like footballers really getting involved in politics anyway. But seriously, especially when it's like, but that's in America. It's not even. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's not even like Catalonian or Spain sort of politics or anything. I don't know why he's getting involved, and that's what I first think. I'm just thinking, what sort of education have you got on this? He knows just about as much as that as I do, but you don't see me commenting going, "Oh yeah, abortion and that." No, you don't, do you? I stick to myself, my principles. I don't. No, but Bellerin, no, the footballers shouldn't be getting involved. I don't like that personally.
So that was the first example I wanted to bring up, just to get another opinion on that. What do you think, Wayne, about that? About just that quote and just Hector Bellerin speaking up about an issue such as abortion?
same thing, really. It's just, what is he doing, really? Like, he's not gonna. It's so like far away from like his world, isn't it? And like his bubble. But what's he doing? Commenting on it? It makes him. He has no relevance to it. His opinion on it is just.
Okay, so now the other example I wanted to bring up, which is it's kind of the two conflicting views on footballers using their influence to talk up about issues that are outside of the venue of football. Obviously, one of the major ones is Raheem Sterling talking about racial issues in football. Now, obviously, we know there's a difference between the two things that I'm talking about here. But just to clarify the difference in what you can talk about outside of football and what's relevant. So, Jack, what do you think about Raheem Sterling? And he's kind of almost been like a pioneer, not a pioneer because there's been players before, but to the extent that he's talked about racial issues, especially in football, what do you think? First of all, what do you think about Raheem Sterling talking about those issues? And secondly, what do you think about the impact?
I think it's fine for him to talk about it because it is an issue and it's a massive issue in football. So he has a right to talk about it. And I think stuff like racism should be spoken more.
Well done, Regan, taking a racial issue very
seriously.
Seriously.
It's distracting, isn't he? Look at him.
He is distracting. Regan,
he should get racist abuse for that haircut. Look at it. Trim's awful.
The amount of people that say look like Eminem.
Right, Regan, go on. You have your view on it then.
I feel like he has more of a place to say what he says compared to Hector Bellerin, because obviously on the pitch, especially during the times of what we are now, he's what was the game? Was it Macedonia or Montenegro or something? He was actually the subject of racial abuse. So obviously he has like firsthand. Where I mean, I don't follow Hector Bellerin's personal life, and God forbid that I do. But I don't think. Obviously, he's entitled to say what he wants. Both of them are. But with football and how big it is, you need to be aware of your public following. They have millions and millions of followers, and then with Raheem Sterling, you can accept what he says because he's been through it all, and I think he's doing something for the campaign of standing up to racism. So yeah, I wouldn't say he can say what he wants, but he has a more valid opinion than Hector Bellerin, who, like you said, Bill, doesn't really He's not an American.
He's not educated, is he? I mean, I know, like, I can't say that I don't know what he looks up in his spare time. But do you know what I mean? But like, he's not educated enough. He's not American, for starters. He's not. I mean, he's not a woman. I mean, you can have a comment on, but you know what I mean. And he's not anyone who has any significance. No matter what Hector Bellerin says, that's not going to change like what people in Alabama think. So is it? Like, is it what Bellerin?
Yeah,
I don't see the point of comment on it, because all you're going to do is cause more like argument rather than actual going to get anywhere.
Yeah, Raheem Sterling's talking more on a national level.
Yeah, I agree with
where
Sterling.
Where Bellerin's talking more of an international one. He doesn't really, he's not really affiliated with.
With Sterling, well, I don't like footballers getting involved in politics, but Sterling clearly deserves to, because I mean, he's been racially abused. He's talking about racial abuse in football mostly. So why wouldn't he's clearly one of the most people who should be talking about it? He's the one who's actually got first-hand experience, rather than Bellerin talk like that. There's a big difference between it. There really is.
So I mean, this kind of just brings up the whole idea of players as role models in the kind of modern era of football, and how the way that their roles are kind of changing with obviously the introduction of social media and the fact that they have platforms to talk individually outside of their club. So it kind of just brings up the question. It came up in the survey which I did, but in general, do you believe that footballers have obligations to discuss matters outside of their jurisdiction, especially either when they're relevant or for the purposes of using their platform? Do you think that they're either obligated or they have a kind of just like a sense of obligation to talk on issues outside of football? Or even, like, say, Raheem Sterling, although racism is obviously at all levels of our society, so it's intrinsically going to be involved in football as well. Do you think that's relevant as well to talk on issues within football as well? Because obviously things like sexism, obviously, or transport, whatever.
I'd say a footballer is 100% not obliged to do anything. They're not obliged to comment on anything. I mean, there's moments as fans we like to see them comment on certain things, like if there was a certain thing that affected football as a whole, you'd like to see what someone thought of it. But especially outside of football, stuff like sexism, footballers should not feel obliged to say those things. They are paid loads of money, and I get that. We paid them loads of money to play football. I get the role model thing as well, but it doesn't really change. I don't think you're not going to change how people think of you if you don't say something. If you say something, suddenly think people are going to change their view of you, and it's just not. I don't think it's needed. Like we said with the Bellerin thing, what is Bellerin going to get from that? What is the topic going to get from that? Bellerin, he shouldn't feel obliged to do that, and I think a lot of the footballers who do comment on these matters, they feel like they can make change, and they feel like they're doing something that's worthwhile. And it's not because they feel forced into doing something. I think a lot of the time it's because they want to become likable. They want to sort of, you know what I mean? I know, I don't mean to sort of get very political, but like a lot of the top of football, especially, is going to be very, people like to think the media's left wing. Do you know what I mean? Like Sky, I mean, it's not, but you know, they like to give the image because right wing's often seen as bad. And a lot of footballers like Bellerin, obviously, clearly he knows he shows off as a very left-wing person. And I think he says stuff like this just to get people on board with him. And he thinks he can make maybe more money out of brand deals in the future. I think that is actually what it is. I think they like commenting on these things because it raises their popularity rather than actually making any change.
Okay. Thoughts on that, Wayne? Just general thoughts on the ideas of footballers using their influence and voice to influence other people because obviously the platform that they have.
Yeah, I think Bill's hit the nail on the head, really, with Neil definitely not obliged to say anything, because obviously you've got professionals and whatnot who obviously it's their job to do that kind of thing. But obviously they do have, I mean, in some ways they will have a lot more. I mean, I think there's a lot more. There's people who will sort of be more willing to, especially sort of young people, more willing to sort of listen to a role model such as a footballer or something that they like, as opposed to sort of a boring politician or whatever. But sort of, if you start sort of relying on sort of footballers and these sort of role models to kind of sort of spread the word about these kind of things and inform people on these things, then I think you're sort of going down a bit of a dangerous path, and it leads to sort of all sorts of like misinformation and whatnot. And so
So on the
Yeah, I
on the
think just leave
opposite,
it to.
I agree with that, Wayne. I do. Like,
so on the opposite, because the opposite argument to that is that influence is influence, and obviously you can say that obviously footballers don't necessarily have the jurisdiction and the sort of right to talk about these things, but other people would say influence and influence is influence. These numbers on social media. If you believe that what you're saying, because no matter what you say is going to be influential, especially to those who are younger or who are older, or the people that you're talking directly about who are potentially directly involved in these issues. So just for opinion, how much credit would you give that opposite opinion that, look, you shouldn't just let your platform go to waste? Do you understand? Do you know what I mean? Regan, what would you say on that to people?
I completely agree with that. I think that if you do have a social media following and you do have an opinion, I don't think you should be scared to hide your opinion based on your following, even though depending on the issue, of course. Well, I'm going back to the Bellerin thing again, but like we say, he doesn't really have much relevance to the topic. But in general, especially national issues, especially in the time we're in now, I think footballers or just sport people in general to use their platform for good, because there's people with more influence that maybe have a less social media following and they can't get their views to all the people that they need to, and maybe footballers or sports stars can actually get their view out to them. So yeah, I think there's two sides to it, but I think the opposite argument is valuable in some sense.
Okay. Now, so obviously,
I'm looking at in the background of Jack. Oh,
Jack,
no room for racism, it said.
So I want to relate it to other professions as well, because obviously, just to relate to Ricky Gervais, obviously during the Golden Globes, outed all the actors who kind of come up on the stage and they're like, oh, so and so's wrong in the world, this is wrong in the world. But as he said, you don't have anything to say on that. You're rich. You don't have any sort of standing on that because you have no experience of what's happening. Whereas the argument that could be made is that, are there certain issues such as, obviously political issues which affect, say, the working class, let's say mental health or minimum wage? Because football is so rooted in the working class, although you could say that these footballers have maybe become sort of disillusioned from that because obviously the amount they earn, but you could say that a lot of them have come from working class backgrounds. Do they have the right to talk about those sort of issues because football is such a working class sport, whereas acting is obviously has connotations of being for the rich and the famous? Thoughts on that, Jack?
Wait, so repeat the question.
So the point of the question is, the point of the question is, do footballers have the right to talk on issues that concern, let's say, the working class, when although football is a working class sport, obviously the pay gap and the wage gap between those footballers and the people they're trying to influence, there's such a gap between the two?
Yeah, I think they can talk about working class issues because most footballers grew up in those working class scenarios, so they have some sort of understanding of it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think they do have the right to talk about them.
Do you know what I like to see? I like to see footballers whose actions speak louder than words. Footballers like who just get, like when you see footballers like, they don't do a big thing about it. They don't have like all this pressure. The stuff like I've seen Aaron Ramsey gifted loads of money to someone on GoFundMe and stuff like people who donate money and make like to these charities and stuff like that, and all people that are in need, and they go and I know footballers have a lot of money, but it's still nice for them to do that, isn't it? Like they don't have to. I like it when footballers do that. I don't like when footballers. I'm going to keep using Bellerin as an example because Bellerin just seems to put his nose in everything, doesn't he? Let's be honest. He talks about all these things, and like Wayne said earlier, there's a dangerous path of where these footballers, fair play for them to try and get in. They're sort of trying. I think footballers talking about things does get eyes on the subject, which is a good thing. But then Bellerin can come out and say something that's so ill-informed. He's not an expert on this, and it'll make everyone think that way. And he gets sort of celebrated. When you see all over social media, on Twitter, you see people like celebrate. Oh, Bellerin said this. Oh, good on him. Is he right though? You don't know if he's right. He's just said something. You've believed it because it's Hector Bellerin. But yeah, footballers are, I think, are allowed to speak about working class. But I'd like to see them do actions first. I don't like these footballers who come out and say, "Oh, we know how hard they work and all that," and they don't do anything about it. So I think with footballers, it's about they do have the right. People who say they don't have the right, they do because they've been working class. Some of them have. So say Jordan Pickford came out and spoke about work class. yeah, fair enough to him. But I'd rather see him help a family out with 30 grand donation that really need it. Do you know what I mean? Rather than say a load of stuff that's meaningless, really.
Okay, so that kind of comes to the whole thing of footballers as role models. Obviously, to keep it relevant, obviously during COVID-19, there's kind of also this gap between the footballer's perceived image, and you see how they deal with certain issues. Because you could potentially say that obviously certain players haven't had to deal with anything that serious necessarily in the limelight, which concerns us all. Because an Aston Villa fan could go, oh, Jack Grealish, he's great, does all this work for charity, does all this, great stuff for the community. But like we saw in the thing, he was telling all the people on the Aston Villa, on Aston Villa Twitter, stay at home, self-isolate, and then hours later was found his car crashed, having come back from a house party. Do you think footballers get away with too much as role models? And if so, would that affect your image, the way you look on them in the future? So, for example, would you say, oh, Grealish, he shouldn't get picked for England because of what he's done outside of football? Reed, can you think on that?
I 100% agree. I'm not just saying that because I absolutely despise Jack Grealish.
Yeah.
I absolutely hate him, but I don't think that they get away with a lot of stuff. So I'm gonna what case? It was the Derby. It was the Derby crash, wasn't it? Literally polar opposites happened. Richard Keogh, he got sacked from the club.
Richard Keogh got sacked and he got injured, so his career's basically over.
Yeah, then you get Tom Lawrence, who I think he was the basic instigator of all of it, or he was one of the main.
Him and Mason Bennett, apparently.
Yeah, he's still playing for Derby. I think did he get picked for Wales? I think he still gets picked for the Welsh side. So I think there's just too much inconsistency. But if you do something wrong, like Jack Grealish did, you're going to get caught out for it. And I'm probably not the best person to ask because I hate him, but I hope he never gets picked for England. But it was less than 24 hours after he said stay home.
Yeah, literally less than 24 hours.
You probably have people on normal Twitter anyway. Probably Bill said it, stay inside, and then he's gone out and gone to the pub or something, or gone get a drink, because that's what Bill does. But the fact he's using his platform for good, but then in his head he's gone back to realising he's trying to shut out his footballer side and his social media influencer, and he's done something bad, you can get caught out for it. And you see a lot of footballers do it when people go through their old Twitter accounts and they see something homophobic or racist. Don't look for any of ours. But yeah, it's too. I think it's too inconsistent.
What's your opinion on the Jack Grealish situation, Wayne?
I think it's like things like that. People are very quick to forget these kind of things when someone's good on the pitch.
Yeah.
Jack Grealish is good at football. A year, you know what I mean? He has a good season. A year from now, he's in the England squad. No one's going to talk about it, are they? He goes in and he's banging in goals for England at the Euros. No one's going to remember that he was an idiot and he got drunk and he broke the lockdown rules. And there's so many examples.
There's so many.
There's so many examples where
people do something wrong and then they come out on Twitter or something and they go, "Oh yeah, I'm really sorry, whatever, blah blah blah," and they don't mean it and they don't care, and then good performance on the weekend and that never happened, didn't it?
So that brings me to my next point in relation to because obviously there's a slant of how it affects their sort of brand and them as players, as individuals, and also the clubs they're contracted to. And there's an argument to say that in recent times, because of players' actions off the field being more influential than they were in the past due to a combination of the changing look on footballers in wider society and also the influence there via social media, would you say that, so for example, Raheem Sterling, you could say, his kit sales have gone up, maybe because of his increase in form, but you could also say because of what he represents off the pitch. So do you think people forget the sort of better, trying to think how to word this, but for example, you could say that Jack Grealish, what he's done hasn't necessarily affected him that badly, and you can say his kit sales are going to stay exactly the same. He's still going to get picked for England. Whereas, do you think that the good positive PR, on the other hand, has that same effect? Things like kit sales and brand deals.
Yeah. I think it does seem like if you have a positive influence on something, stuff like that is going to go up. Look, there's definitely people who've bought
Oh,
Sterling.
Raheem Sterling's got a new 100 million.
Yeah, there's definitely that part of it. But there's also, you're right though. I think negative things doesn't affect you, but positive things raise you up. I think footballers are in a win-win situation, to be honest, in most scenarios. So Jack Grealish, Villa fans aren't going to stop buying Jack Grealish tops, are they? They love him, but Sterling's tops are going to go up. Yeah, you're right. I think there's a lot of positive things for footballers and very few negative things. And the argument before as well, with the should outside affect the game. I was going to say, no, keep them both separate. I don't care. But I think it is very based on scenarios as well. Like what Jack Grealish did, he was an idiot. He should have got a big fine. He should have, he should serve whatever he has to serve. Like if there's a community service thing he has to do, whatever, serve that. But that's not enough for him to get banned from England. In my personal view, that's not enough to get banned from playing for England. Like, you're a very good footballer. If it's the best for England to pick you, pick you. I draw a line at stuff like, there's footballers out there who have killed people. You should be
Goalkeepers.
You
Marcus Alonso.
Like, they should lock you up and throw away the key. You should not be allowed to play football again. There's no chance. There's big. I know it's quite hard to judge it, but there's big differences, isn't there? There is big differences to it. I think it depends on what someone's done. But I do agree that I think footballers, for the most part, like Wayne said, get away scot-free of stuff, to be honest. And if that is probably why they all talk out about stuff. Well, not all, a lot of footballers like to talk about stuff, because I don't think anything's ever going to go negatively for them. If it goes negative, people will forget about it. If it goes positive, you'll get praised forever by thousands of people. So
True. Yeah, because the worst thing that happen is you'll trend on Twitter for a few hours and people see what you said. But in the end, you're getting more clicks on what you say. You'll probably get a few more followers, and in the end, you'll just get more popular what you're doing. In the long run, it's good that you say something bad for footballers.
Yeah.
Okay, last kind of major point I want to talk about. I want to talk about the role of charity in football, and I kind of want to relate to two examples. So the first example, it's not a specific example. Remember on Match of the Day, they'd always have a section where it would always be one of the football clubs going to their local hospital. And let's be honest, we all know it was just to fill a quota per year that each club has to go to the local hospital, the local kind of community centre, and do so and so. But now that social media existed before, but not in the prominent way it does now, where footballers are... All right,
Simon, you've joined.
Big up.
You all right, Simon? Do you need Zoom, Simon?
Oh, he's gone.
Oh, it's gone. His face is still there.
Brilliant. Nice little appearance. Anyway, so what I was saying is that the role of kind of charity and goodwill has kind of become more... Before, the footballers and what their club did were pretty much connected. Whereas now there's individual cases, for example, Jermaine Defoe with Bradley Lowery. That was just a spontaneous thing in which Jermaine Defoe was reaching out to the fans. Mm. Obviously, Bradley Lowery contacted him. And obviously, as a result of that, Sunderland got good public relations and got a good reputation for it because of all the work they did with Bradley Lowery and also cancer charities. So I was just wondering, do you think that now that footballers are a bit more disconnected from what they do as clubs and they can kind of operate independently, as we saw from Raheem Sterling and Hector Bellerin, do you think if a Raheem Sterling goes out to say this is terrible racial, prejudice in football, should Man City then be obliged to follow with what Raheem Sterling says, or to kind of follow with what their star players are saying?
I don't know. I think Regan would be good to answer that. I don't know.
I'd say Jack, because I don't think Jack said a lot.
Come on, Jack. So if I simplify the question, it's basically to say, if your star player or one of your players goes out and has quite a strong or kind of out, either left wing, right wing, political, can be on anything, should the football club then be obliged to follow that or in any way respond to that with their own kind of opinion? Because you could say there would then be a conflict in opinions and sort of public image if Raheem Sterling says this, but Man City say this. I'm not saying it has to be on race, but just kind of topic.
it needs to be something that everyone can sort of agree with. So, like, we can all agree that racism's bad, but say, like, again, with Bellerin, about him and the abortion stuff, you're not going to have Arsenal coming out and saying, oh, yeah, abortion's bad, because that's a very mixed topic. So it depends on the topic and what the player is, talking about. So, yeah.
Yeah, I don't think clubs are going to get involved when it's something that could develop. Like Arsenal are going to have fans in America, aren't they, who probably agree or disagree with Bellerin. So I don't think football clubs should be obliged to get on board with their players. I think there should be sort of an idea of being separate from each other, because like, I didn't think there was years ago, but now there is, isn't there? Footballers are their own quantity, aren't they? They have like Sterling. People will support Raheem Sterling, if he's at Man City or not. So I don't think Man City should feel obliged to. Obviously, they're going to racism. Every football club's going to get on board with that. But yeah, I don't think football clubs should feel obliged to get on board with what their big players say at all.
No, I completely agree. It's more that if you're not agreeing with what the football club says, you're agreeing with I think, like what Bill said, these players have it's not their, they are employees, but they're more their own entities. And I say that all of them have their own brand as such. It's like your view, you don't have to agree with the Man City brand if they say something, but like Raheem Sterling, the club doesn't have to agree with Raheem Sterling, because I'd say they're two separate brands as such. And then it's more like when they do agree, it's more like a merge in business terms, but separately you agree with the Raheem Sterling brand as such, you don't combine them together on some contrasting issues like Jack said, abortion or other stuff like that. But yeah, like racism in general, you see when they walk off pitches and when the matches get abandoned, you see across all of Facebook and Twitter, all the teams saying, we stand with so and so and so and so. Yeah, but that's right. But if you see people talk about Twitter posts, you don't see, oh, we stand with him because, oh, abortion's bad. That's the footballer's separate brand saying that. And I feel the club has a bigger following in most occasions than the brand of the footballer. So I feel like if they speak out, you surround everyone in the club except for just one person.
I think it's very different depending on the level. Like we said, like the higher footballers, they got their own brands. They're a completely different thing. And to be honest, as far as their connection goes to the club, is they're being paid their wages from that club. That's pretty much it. I think a lot of time, Ronaldo's not associated with certain clubs, is he? Ronaldo's he's just sort of a brand of himself, and then he hops around the clubs. Like, do you know what I mean? Whereas I think it's a bit different lower down the levels. Say, like, I don't know, a club like Mansfield or something. If players come, I think players sort of are forced, but they probably enjoy it to actually sort of share the values of the club, and they help. And when you see like lower down the leagues, a lot of the time footballers, when they do express their opinions, they express it on the like the club's website or the club's social media rather than their own, because obviously they don't have that big of a following. So that lower down, I think they get more involved. Whereas, at like the top level, the brand and the player are separate.
Yeah. Last kind of question each for all of you. So when buying a kit or merch, I'm going to say kits because it's the easiest way. We're all wearing a football kit apart from... Oh, no, we're all wearing a football kit. Brilliant.
Griffin Park is falling down.
Unlucky. For
It's already fallen down.
Of their ability on the pitch, what reasons have you bought a kit with a player's name on the back? I'm not saying like what they're saying on race or anything like that, but for like their personality, let's say, or what they kind of stand for within your club. What kind of reasons have you had a certain individual's name on the back of your kit?
Does anyone have any on them now?
No. I think as you get older, you grow out of that. But I'll be honest, I've had, I think, in terms of Brentford, I've only ever had one kit that's got the name on the back of it. And
oh, really?
Yeah, I got Sam Saunders on the back of it, and it was the last year he was ever at the club. It wasn't an iconic Saunders kit. It's because he had been at the club ages. I loved him. He was my favourite player, even if he wasn't the best player. He was my favourite. So that's the reason I've got a player's name on the back, because of what they sort of represent for the club, and it's because I love him personally. I wouldn't usually get a player's name on the back because of their performances on the pitch. Usually, I think most people get the player on the back who they like, don't they? It's their personal favorite, rather than So, like, if you're a Brentford fan, you'd assume everyone would just get Ollie Watkins on the back or something like that, or Ben Rant, but they don't. People get other players on the back because it's who they like. Like, a lot of people got Pontus Jansson on the back just because of what it represents. I think merchandise sales do very much depend not on how good the player is. It's about if they're likable or not. I think a lot of the time.
Jack?
Yeah, no, I agree with Bill. I've only ever really got players that I liked, so like Tiotti and Andy Carroll.
Danny Ings, Nathan Redmond, Angus Gunn, Yannick Vestergaard.
Wayne, you've definitely had a top of Dean Hammond on the back. I can just imagine.
Do you know what, right? I've never bought a kit with a name on the back.
No, I've only ever had one. Yeah.
They don't stick around long enough.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, imagine, like being a Saints fan, we signed Dejan Lovren on the back. 1 year later, he's backstabbed the club and, gone to Liverpool and everyone hates him. What's the point? Like,
no,
you know what I mean? So,
Regan, you support about 8 clubs. You must have a couple of kits.
I think Regan goes very against what everyone else is saying, in all honesty.
No, I actually agree with Bill. And I don't support 8 clubs, even though I'm wearing a top that isn't the club that I actually mainly support. But that's besides the point. I just agree with what Bill said, in that you're investing your money not into like the player that he's spoken out on such things, because if you agree with what Bellerin says, fine, buy a Hector Bellerin kit. You'll be one of the only people to do so. But no one is gonna. Well, it's in my point of view. I don't see anyone going, I agree with what he said morally, and I agree with, like, if Jack Grealish didn't go out partying afterwards, you wouldn't get people from other clubs being, what he said's great. Let's buy an England kit with Jack Grealish on it, because that's just not what happens. And hopefully he never gets to that stage, even though he probably will. But I feel like what Bill said, you just get shirts with players on the back of players you like, or even if not even the teams you support. It's just, if you like a player, just for maybe the way that they play, or maybe you follow their career and you just have a soft spot for them, and you get a kit from like Dybala of Juventus, not naming any people that have that. It's just, I think you just follow the career of someone, and it's not depending on morals. At the end of the day, it just benefits the club. If you have a good player, you'll get more sales. Simple as that.
It's like Ronaldo. Didn't Ronaldo's transfer get covered by his shirt sales?
Yeah, within the first 2 weeks, I think.
Within the first 2 weeks, and that's the thing. A lot of people won't pick Ronaldo because I know Ronaldo's a bit of a different to me saying Sam Saunders, but I mean, Ronaldo, it's not, people won't pick him because of his political views. People pick him because he's Ronaldo, and everyone wants to do the stance and take free kicks like him, don't they? That's why people get Ronaldo tops, and people will get Messi tops and try dribbling for everyone. I'm sure Jack's done that a few times. But yeah, I think you get a footballer shirt who you personally like, and I think for most football fans, it might be different with American sports. I bet it's very different with American sports actually, but you get the player who you like. Like in America, I can imagine, oh my God, there's so many political decisions about who you pick on your shirt and stuff. I can just imagine. But
they're very careful from a basketball point of view, they're very careful with what they say, especially with the government out there at the moment. You have to be very careful what you say. But there are some people out there in the world of basketball that express their views, and yeah, they do get a bit of criticism. But the people that agree with them, their following skyrockets immensely.
Can you imagine the amount
you will get
bought Colin Kaepernick tops after he did?
Oh, loads. You're probably not even an American football fan in America, and you've bought a Kaepernick.
But would that happen in England of football? It wouldn't, I don't think.
Well, as in if Andy Murray spoke out about racism?
No, let's think about this. If the first gay footballer in the Premier League, if the first Premier League footballer to come out as gay came out, let's say, I'm not going to say who specifically, but let's just say it was a West Ham player. Do you think it would have an effect on their merchandise sales? Because that is such a big thing. That would be such a
that is drastic. Yeah.
Obviously, that's looking on like that is.
Charles, I don't mean to be like, but the only people.
Jared Bowen.
You're right. It would have an effect. The only people who would buy it though are gay people. Don't you think though? Like it'd
That
represent,
reason, yeah.
It'd represent them, and they'd buy like. I don't mean to be. I mean, I might be completely wrong. But like, it's like like how you said Raheem Sterling's sales went up because of the racism thing. It was probably black people who bought the t-shirts, or the shirts, because it represents for
Yeah,
them.
of course, yeah.
It's all about representing you, isn't it? Whereas if there was a footballer who came out who's really fat, I would buy his shirt.
I think I'd buy his kit.
Yeah. And he only sells in like his size.
He sells in Giacomo.
Yeah. But no, that's. I think that's what it is. I think it's about representation of the actual person. I don't think because Raheem Sterling, I completely respect what he came out and did, but I wouldn't buy his shirt because of what he did.
Yeah.
I'd buy his shirt because I like him as a footballer. I wouldn't do it because of his political stance.
Can I touch on what Bill said quickly earlier, even about when you said that Ronaldo's shirt sales covered in 2 weeks? You said it's not because his political views. Do you notice that with the top tier players like your Messis, your Neymars, your Ronaldos,
there isn't
they
political.
do not speak at all on political issues, apart from Messi and Abidal recently, and we all know how that almost ended.
Do you know why?
See the impact they have.
You know why, Regan? Because they know they've got so much already, but if they say something, they could potentially lose stuff. And it could affect them. Whereas people like Hector Bellerin, I don't mean, let's be honest, he's a good footballer, but he's always injured. He's pretty irrelevant. If Bellerin didn't say stuff, would he be relevant? He wouldn't, would he? Because of how much he's been injured. I think Bellerin's all this talking out has come out when in a few years where he's been injured. Yeah, I think that's what I was saying at the beginning. I think footballers sometimes do it to become relevant. Whereas like Ronaldo, Messi, they don't need relevancy. They're already at the top. They won't say anything because it will affect their brand if they did.
Yeah, or just ruin their public image, which someone at the top of the game, you can't do that. Where someone like, I don't know, who's an average player, like if Elvis Pomono said something, the lad himself, it'll just be the polar opposite of what happens. That was horrible.
Right. Cheers, lads. That was a nice little discussion.
We're done now,
We are done, yeah.
How did Ryan get on in his game, Jack?
How do you do?
I've been watching it.
One.
Oh, yeah, there we go. Regan's putting his trim away. Right, well, I think we'll probably be back again, won't we? Jack, I think the next one we're going to do is we're going to try and do an FTT sort of quiz, aren't we? Yeah.
I'll be back in 2 weeks because I'm on the road trip to Germany because the Bundesliga's back.
Oh, yeah.
You're not allowed in.
Yeah, I'll just sit outside in the grounds like that.
Sit outside and watch it on your laptop outside.
With my satellite pointing at the stadium.
Yeah, right. Anyway, cheers, lads, for that. I mean, it was Charles who hosted it, but... Anyway.
Yeah, it was for my uni assignment, so thanks, guys.
I don't know when the video will be out, but remember to like and subscribe to the FTT Podcast YouTube channel and follow us on... Is it It's iTunes, isn't it, Jack? We're on iTunes, remember that? SoundCloud, and we're going to get Spotify up going at some point as well. And...
watch this space. We will be back, probably sooner than you think.
Yeah, see you when you're older. Don't go changing.
Sooner than you want.
Yes. And we're done, chaps.